Hi, it's Kreampuff and welcome back to my channel. Today is the second installment of our Halloween Ghoul series. If you missed Frankenstein, I'll put a link to the video in the description box below. But today, it's Mummy's Day. So grab your best Egyptian wrappings and let's get started. Alright, we are going to start with the face of the mummy. I have two fabrics that are actually the same pattern. This just has a kind of a parchment colored background and this has a cream colored background. I'm not going to measure anything at this point in time. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut a couple of pieces at corresponding angles. So there is one. Oops. So this piece will go like that, and this is the same piece that I used for my other mummy, so I have some already cut. So there's that. So this is the wide end on the lighter strap, so this needs to be the wider end on the other strap. So I'm just going to go across. Now, one thing of concern for my mummy, I did use a 10-inch ruler, so it's okay to be a little bit short on the top, but as you work your way down the mummy, you need to make sure that your strips are at least 10 inches wide. Okay, so I'm gonna go, that looks a little straight. There we go. Wow, that looks really straight. So on the next piece we can make an adjustment. So now I'm just going to take this, so 1/4 of an inch seam up this side, and I'll be back. Okay, I have sewed 1/4 of an inch seam allowance and pressed that piece. Now I'm going to take my lighter material, lay it over that a little bit. Now the wider end was on the far side, so this time I'm going to make the wider end on this side. Again, I'm only going to cut to about there, because that's all the farther I really need. Somewhere in there. Okay. Now, to me, this piece is a little too straight. So I'm actually, when I sew it, I'm going to put it over just a little bit, and I'm going to sew along the top line. You can trim this off if you want to, once you have it sewn together. So let me do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, I've sewn the white on. Now remember, I'm not worried about the edges. They'll turn out to be where they are because most of them will be cut off. So I'm going to continue on this method until I get it about 7 inches, and then I'll be back and we'll put the eyes together. Okay, I've sewed 2 more strips on. I'm at about 7 inches away from my bottom. So now it's time to add the eyes. So what I want to do is I'm going to use a 1.5 inch black strip to do my eyes. So I need a strip here that is at least 2 inches wide, and I'll show you why in a moment. But I still want it on an angle. So my wide side is over here, but I want to make sure I have at least 2 inches on the other side. So I'm going to take this, cut it across, and we have our piece. Alright, I'm going to turn this around so I cut everything the correct way. So this is how this piece will go on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my 45-degree ruler. I'm sorry, my 45-degree edge of my ruler, and I'm going to cut a slant. So I want to think about where this is going to be in relation to my eyes. So if I kind of think of him going up the middle, I want one eye here and one eye here. So put my 45 on here, and I'm going to cut a 45-degree slant. Move it in. I'm about 2 inches in from the left-hand side. Okay. I'm going to put the longer piece aside for a moment and work with the shorter one. We're going to do the same thing, replicating this angle on the black strip. Okay, my 45 is on the edge of the black. I'm going to make a cut. Okay, so sewing from the bottom, not the top, I'm going to sew this piece on. So we put these two together. I'm going to line up the corners, which if you're a quilter, you know that's not normally what you do when you're cutting angles or sewing angles, but that is what I'm going to do. So let me sew this and we'll continue on. Okay, I've sewn this in. We do have a gap here. It's okay, we'll address that in a moment. So what we're going to do now is cut the other side of the triangle. So I'm going to move this up and put my 45 degrees on this line. Oh, I'm a little bit off today. And I'm going to make my cut. And I'm going to cut through the black and the brown. And this will make sense in just a moment. Okay? I'm going to take my other piece and make the same cut. So I'm going, because right now they aren't going to go together, so I'm going to make a corresponding cut in this direction so that that'll sew together. So I'm going to go about to there. I'm going to come down. So again, I have my 45 here, and then I have one of my line measurements there. And basically what we're doing is cutting out that triangle. Okay. So now I'm going to take this, line it up exactly, and sew in my eye. So just fold it over and sew it together. Okay, I have this sewn, so we are all set. I have my eye. It is set down from the top so that when I do sew the seam, I don't lose the point of my eye. So now we're just going to repeat again for the second eye. So we're going to lay my 45 onto this, and I'm only using the brown because this isn't lined up anymore. I'm going to set them a little bit closer. Okay. Alright, now it's time for the black part of the eyeball. So we're going to take this, flip it over. Oops. Let's do black and then flip it over and sew this at a 1/4 inch seam. Okay, I have this pressed. I'm going to cut. I need to cut this way. Alright, do the ruler dance. Again, lining my black up on the 45. Make the cut, cut both the black and the background off. So I have this pressed and steamed. Now this was the other piece that was left from this cutting. So I can't use that because that is angled in the wrong direction. So I grabbed a larger piece, and I just need to trim up this side. So, there we go. I love that ruler dance some days. Just have to get your brain wrapped around which way you're headed. Okay. Cut this. Okay. So now it's bigger. It's okay. We'll trim it down. This time I'm going to split the difference because I am going to lose a little bit, but I want to make sure I have enough to trim. So I'm going to split the difference, so 1/4 of an inch seam. Okay, I have sewed my seam there. It doesn't line up, it's okay. Being a freestyler, I would rather make things slightly bigger and trim them down to the exact size that I need versus trying to guess and be short and have to do it all over again. So I'm okay with trimming. I know there's a different school of thought out there, but for me, that is how I would rather do it. So what I'm going to do now is trim up this strip and insert it into the face. So I'm just picking a point, lining it up. In this case, I lined it up with the bottom of the eyes. And over here, I'm just gonna make it a little bit wider over there. Okay, there we go. All right, time to sew the eyes in. Make a decision where you want it. If you want to lay the template down, for me, the eyes are going to be just about there. I don't know. That's where I like it. We'll see how it turns out. So I'm just going to sew this piece on, and I'll be right back. All right, eyes are pressed in. I think that looks pretty good. Now I did press it away from where all of these seams are. It just gives a flatter surface and folding it up onto the black eyes. So I'm going to continue on until I have enough so that I can take my half hexie and flip it over. So let me add a couple more stripes and I'll be back. Okay, I have enough stripes on here to cut out his face. So if you watched Frankenstein's video, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to put this ruler on, trace around 3 sides, flip it over, and move it up and line it up. So now is the time to play with it, to see where you want the eyes. I want to give my guy a pretty good size forehead. Let's look and see. He's got a pretty good size forehead. So I'm going to do that. I think that looks good. And I'm just going to trace around, making sure to get these corner points really well. Okay. Alright, I got my corner point, but let's totally missed one spot. Let's go back and try again. There we go. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up this top point with what was the top point before I flipped it over. So I'm not lining it up down here. I am lining it up with, I'm taking out the seam allowance is what I'm doing. So I'm not including this flat edge from the top. Alright, I'm going to grab a smaller ruler and cut this out. Okay, I have everything cut out. Now we just need to add a chin. So I'm going to add a 2.5 inch strip, and I'm just going to take a couple of smaller pieces and piece them together. Now this is 5 inches wide. So I want to do a piece that is probably about 275 wide so I can trim it up with the bandage effect. We're going to need to trim some of it off. So let me get that piece together and I'll be right back. Okay, I have cut a square that is 5 inches by 2.5 inches. So now I'm just going to sew his chin on and then we'll straighten this out. Okay, I've sewed the chin on, and now all I'm going to do is use my lines from the hexagon and just square it up. I guess I'm not squaring it up, I'm hexing it up would be the appropriate term, maybe, I'm not sure. But guess what? Our mummy has a chin. All right, our head is almost finished. What I'm going to do is, this is a 1.5 inch strip, and I'm going to sew one piece of the strip on every side of the hexagon. I'll do one side to show you, and then I'll come back with the finished project. Okay, I have one strip sewed on, and all I'm going to do is use the other lines of the head as a reference point. So I'm just going to line it up there and trim. Line it up there and trim. Okay, and then the next piece will go on here, and then just do that all the way around the head until you have the entire thing covered in a black strip. Okay, I'm back. I have the head completely encased in a black frame. So now all we have left to do is the 4 corners. So when I did Frankenstein, I just laid this on the material and cut it as needed. So now I want to show you a different technique on how to get your sizing for the corners. So I've lined up my head here on one line on my mat, and I've given myself about 1/2 inch extra. Again, I'd rather be a little bit over and have to trim a little bit off than be short. So I've lined it up on this ruler at 9. Now I want about 1.5 inch border here. So I'm going to set this up so that it's about 1.5 inches and move my second ruler over to this line. Now if I look down here, I'm at about 3.5. I'm going to give myself an extra 1/2 inch. So I'm going to move that to 3. So one side of my rectangle will be 9 minus 3 is 6 inches. Now when I cut this, so say I have my piece on here, I'm actually excuse me, going to use this line to trim it up. So I need the material to at least come to that point. So I'm going to use my ruler again, and I need it to be at 8 inches. Again, I'm going to add 1/2 inch. So I need an 8.5 inch piece this way. So again, I'm going to take it, it's going to come down to here, excuse me, and over to here. So 9 minus 3 is 6, and then 1 to 8.5, or I'm sorry, 0 to 8.5. So I need a piece 6 by 8.5. Okay, let me cut those pieces. I'm going to cut 2, one for each side because I want them to be the same, and I'll be right back. Okay, I have my piece cut. Now what I'm going to do is I put my rulers back. I'm going to line them up where they were. I'm just going to lift the actual face up. I want to make sure that I have both of these ends covered. So I'm just going to slide it under. I did leave the selvage on that piece, but it'll be okay. Slide it until everything is covered. Okay, I'm going to actually just go a smidge under. Okay, now to get the angle that we need, I'm just going to take another ruler, line it up with the head, and cut just the background material. Okay, so we have now copied the angle of this edge. Oops. And I'm going to sew this on. I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Okay, I have the 2 bottom panels on. Now it is time to do a bit of trimming. Let's just line that up with my black sashing. 1.25 inches there. Make the cut. The bottom I'm going to do in one cut, so I'm going to do the other side. 1.25 inches. Make the cut. Whew, I just have enough. Line it up with the bottom. cut. Okay. All right, so now we're going to do the exact same thing with the top. So I'm going to flip it over. Pick a point on my ruler, so this time I'm going to line it up with 8. Give myself an extra 1/2 inch. So I'm measuring a 1/2 inch from here to there because this is set up on an even, on a exact line. Grab my other ruler. Now this time I don't have to add because the 1.5 inch to get away from it because it's already included in this length here. Okay, so make sure that's flat. Okay. Alright, so if I'm at 8 and I'm just a hair over under 4, so I'm going to do on this one, I'm going to do 4.5. So 4.5 this way for my rectangle. And I need to come all the way up here, and I'm just a hair over 7, so I'm going to do 7.5. So I'm going to cut 2 squares, one for each side, 4.5 by 7.5. Okay, so I have my other piece cut. I'm going to make sure my bats are flying all in the same direction. I'm going to lay it underneath. Make sure I have a little bit extra at both ends. Make sure it's pretty straight there. And lay my ruler down. Cut. And then go sew. I'll do that to the other side and I'll be back. Alright, I've added my top pieces and squared it up. Now I did end up squaring this up to about 1.25 inches on each side. I'm happy that I did it at 1.5 inches. It gave me a little bit extra wiggle room. Now to finish this block up, I think I'm going to add a nice 2-inch strip here and here. And again, remember to starch it before doing your final square up because these are cut on the bias. So you do have a little bit of play in there. But let me add those 2 pieces and I'll be back. Alright, you never know what a good starching can do. I did have a little bit of a wrinkle over here, but I just soaked it, let it sit for a moment. I steamed it a couple of times and then I switched over to a dry iron and it came out perfectly. So the little bobble that I had there is gone. This block ended up to be 14 by 15 3/4. So it's easy to do, just take your time with it and you should be able to do it without any issues. Alright, here is our mummy block. Hopefully he doesn't haunt your dreams, but he is ready to join Frankenstein in our table runner of ghouls. So keep an eye out for the next ghoul to wander around my sewing table. If you liked this video, please press and steam the subscribe button. This is Kreampuff. I'll talk to you soon.